Hello everybody, and thank you for joining me. This is Ciara from Ciara T Designs, and today I have another in my Christmas in July series to share with you guys, so let's jump right in. Hopefully you're not getting tired of my alcohol ink and or snowflake cards, because here we go with another one. So I'm going to start by cutting down my cardstock. For that, I am going to use some A2 sized bases, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then I've cut my gold mat down to be about 1/8 of an inch smaller than the base. And then I'm going to create a white panel that will be 1/8 of an inch smaller than the white or the gold mat. So it's about 1/4 of an inch smaller than my A2 base. So hopefully the measurements make sense, but honestly, you're just aiming for a nice thin layer all the way around. Now, we're going to do some kind of weird measurements in this, and don't ask me why I decided to do this. Hopefully, I will explain them well for you guys. But when we get to my piece of Yupo, which we're going to cut down next, I really wanted to do 3/4 inch strips. So because of that, and I knew I wanted 3 because you guys know I work in uneven numbers, I had to figure out the math of that. So I needed a piece of Yupo that would be 11 1/4 by 4 1/2, I think is what I ended up at. And this is because I wanted to do 3 strips on each card that are 3/4. If you're going to redo this, just do inch strips. The math is easier, but that's what I wanted to do. So that's what I'm going to do. Don't ask me why. So the math for it was I needed 3/4 times 3, which is 2 1/4. And then I needed 2 1/4 times 5, which is 11 1/4. That's how I got my measurements. So this strip is 11 1/4 inches by 4 1/2 inches because you know the card panel is going to be 4 1/4, right? So that gives me a little bit sticking off the edge that I can cut on that angle. So that's my thought process behind the measurements. If you're going to recreate this, I honestly would just do them inches. It would be easier. So, 3 1-inch strips, but I don't know. I want it to be complicated. So for my inks, I went with Alchemy, which is a pearl, Tranquil, which is a pearl. Actually, they're all pearls. I went with Alchemy, Tranquil, Enchanted, and Scorch. And then I did bring in a touch of alloy, which is gold here. I didn't break it up well enough. I do find the alloys, I struggle with them a bit. So I wanted to bring it in to introduce just a touch of gold to the background, but I didn't break it up well enough. So it kind of ended up being a bit of a chunk in the middle of those two pieces. Again, you're not going to tell because we're going to cut them down into strips, but it was kind of weird as I was creating my panel. Now, again, as I say to you guys every time, if you don't like the colors I've chosen for a Christmas card, not a problem. Pick different colors. I'm just trying to give you inspiration that makes me really happy, and then you guys alter it to be whatever you need it to be. So you could do shades of blue and purple here. That would be stunning for a Christmas card. If you wanted to do red and green, just be careful because they are complementary colors, so they will try to create brown. That's the purpose of complementaries. So just be aware of that and just tailor your stuff to it. So you can make it kind of easier on yourself. But I, of course, go with vibrant colors. I had never used Scorch before this, and I have to say, I really enjoyed it. Scorch is that kind of burnt orange that you see in there, and what a fun color that was. So I'm going to have to bust that out in a different project because it turned out beautiful. So of course I also went in and I splattered my ISO all over the background. I did use blending solution. If you guys caught my last alcohol ink video, you'll know that I just greatly prefer blending solution when working with alcohol inks, just like I greatly prefer Yupo. There is other options. Those are just the ones that I have found work the best for me and the outcome that I want. So of course you can use any non-porous surface, vellum, acetate, anything that's not paper, really. Anything that's non-porous. And then of course you can use isopropyl. I always say that wrong. Isopropyl. There you go. You can also use that instead of blending solution, but I find that it waters down my colors, alcohols down my colors, so the colors aren't as vibrant. And of course, you guys know I love vibrant colors. So because of that, I do tend towards blending solution as a preferred. But I get a lot of questions that are like, well, can I use this thing? you probably can. You'd have to give it a try. I just use what I prefer. So I haven't tried all of these things you can try on the market. And I find that Yupo gives me the most movement, and I really like the wispy look to my alcohol inks. So I've tried other versions of like the Tim Holtz alcohol ink cardstocks. I've tried them, and I find Yupo just gives me the most movement, and that's kind of what I'm searching for in my alcohol inks. So, but by all means, try what you have. Worse out of worse, it's one piece and you can toss it. Like, use a little square and give it a go and see what happens. But I just use what I prefer. So you can of course always ask me questions, but I just generally prefer to use Yupo and blending solution. It's just my preference. And then I like to splatter on a little ISO just to create some interesting texture to the background. Now again, you can add the white and black splatters. I didn't in this one just because I did it in the last one, and I'm trying to do something a little bit different that's kind of interesting. But you absolutely can, so that's completely up to you. Now I'm going to cut this down, and I'm going to make a mistake while I'm cutting this down. I'm going to kind of cut it funny when I go to I think it's the third one I cut. I didn't cut, because again, remember, I'm going for 2 1/4, right? So I did make a mistake when I was cutting this. Not a big deal. I just fixed it. You're just going to see one of the strips has kind of a funny extra piece, but it's not a big deal. It's just one of those things where I had to kind of correct my math as I was doing this. This is why I suggest maybe doing the 1 inch instead of the 3/4 strips, because it would be easier to cut them down and everything, because you don't have to be quite as paying attention as I'm doing here. But it worked out in the end. I think that it created a really bunch of stunning cards. It was just one of those things where I really had to think about what I was doing because the math was a bit odd. So it's one of those things where you're just going to have to, play with it, see what you come up with. Maybe don't create 5 cards at a time, then the math wouldn't be as difficult. But I like to create card sets, so that's kind of what I go towards. I just think it's kind of fun because you can give them away as a gift if you wanted to, and that's something that I've been kind of leaning towards. I also have a large market coming up that I'm going to be selling cards in, so having extra ones on hand as well as the ones that I give away, or I send to my pen pals, or I mail out to people on my Happy Mail list, that kind of stuff. So sets have kind of been working really great for me that way. And so of course you can see that's the little strip that I kind of messed up on. Not a big deal. I'm just going to adhere it down later when we go to that stage, but I did have to kind of frown at that one for a minute just to figure out what I had done wrong. But it's just that I miscut one piece, but it worked out okay in the end. And then I'm going to bring in the Tim Holtz Vault Diamonds 3D embossing folder. This was my first time using it, and I thought it was a really neat embossing folder. So I did mist my cardstock before I put it through my switch, just because I thought that would be the best way to get the best cut, or the best impression, I guess would be the right way to say that. And so I ran that through my switch. I did have to change my plates out. I just had too much thickness, and thankfully the switch just won't take your sandwich if it's not correct. Because this is how my sandwich goes through, I did have to kind of just switch it up. That's why you see that the plates have changed. And then I ran all of the 5 backgrounds for this. This is going to sit behind my alcohol ink strips when I start to build the card. And I thought that it just kind of added a really fun texture. I like the geometric ones. I think that they just add some really neat interest without stealing the show. I think that you still really notice the alcohol ink strips and then maybe the snowflake first, but this just adds a little bit of something interesting in the background for you to kind of notice and admire. So I thought that was kind of fun. I am going to eyeball the distance between my alcohol ink strips. I generally don't measure things much. The only exception is like this, where I'm trying to get 3 strips that they're same width. That's kind of the exception. But otherwise, I kind of tend to just eyeball things. I mean, you could bust out a ruler and try to make sure that you get the exact distance if you want to, but I don't even think you really notice it. So it's not really a big deal, but completely up to you and what your preference is that direction. I've never had someone come back and say, hey, I didn't like this card that you made because these strips aren't exactly placed apart, right? So I don't really worry about that, but It's one of those things that you need to do whatever makes you happy in your card making. So please do that, because I just tend not to measure because I'm not really worried about it, but completely up to you. So I did all 5 cards. I'm going to show you the panels here just because I think it's fun to kind of see them come together. And you can see that one panel on the left side there, you can see it has that little extra strip at the top. I don't really think it's noticeable once the card is actually put together. You guys would have to tell me what you think. You could leave it off, but then it wouldn't match everything else. So it's completely up to you. I mean, it was a simple error that just was one of those things where, what do you do, right? You just kind of keep going and keep trucking along. It wasn't a big deal, so I just kind of added it on after I adhered all my strips kind of on that vertical. And this is why I went for a 4.5 inch strip, because this panel is now cut down to, it should actually be 4 inches. So it gives me the ability to work and have a little bit hanging off both sides, making sure that I can trim the excess and have that run the whole length of the card panel, which was my intention, just because I thought it looked kind of pretty. And I did trim these off, we're going to see that in a minute, before I adhered them to the gold mat, just because I wanted that gold to go all the way around nicely. So I'm going to bring in my trimmer and trim them off here in a minute. So I just want to quickly take a second to thank the members of my channel. You guys are amazing. I appreciate you so much. You guys make making this content something I can do, something completely achievable, because you're helping me, supporting my dreams and all of that. So I thank you so much. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, I really would appreciate it if you'd consider subscribing. I have the dream of hitting 20,000 by the end of the year. And so if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing. That and leaving comments and leaving thumbs up and whatnot is what tells YouTube that, my content is interesting, or you enjoyed it, or, maybe they should show it to other new people. So if you have a sec, I'd really appreciate it if you'd do those things. And if you have subscribed to the channel, thank you so much for wanting to come back and hang out with me. I greatly appreciate you taking an interest in what I'm up to and what I'm creating. That means so much to me, and I can't thank you guys enough, all of you. So thank you for even coming and just watching the video. I really appreciate you guys. So you can see here I brought in my trimmer to cut off the edges. I just thought that would be the easiest way to line it up and trim them, so it would give me the cleanest cut. I think on one I did miscut it a touch, so they were a bit far out still. I just brought in my scissors and trimmed them down a little bit to make sure that they weren't still sticking out when I went to adhere this to the gold cardstock. So next, I believe we're going to start adhering everything. You see that I have one panel that I cut feathers out of. As a general rule, and I do get a lot of comments on this, people ask me why I don't cut the center out of the gold cardstock or whatever cardstock I happen to be matting my panel to. And generally the reason I do this is there's a couple of reasons. One, this gold cardstock bruises incredibly easily. I don't know if bruises is the right word. Mars is maybe a better word. If you put it through the die cut machine, I find if you have any impurities in any of your plates, which we all know the plates are one of the first things to get marred, they will show on the gold cardstock. And I sell a lot of my cards, so to me it makes sense more to create a card that has the least amount of bruising or marring in my cardstock as possible. Also, I actually have a fair amount of this gold cardstock on hand because I taught a bunch of classes using it. So I had a lot on hand, and I got a pretty good price on it because I teach at my local store. So they give me a discount because of that. And so I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like a quality thing. Like, I sell a lot of my cards. I don't sell them for an inexpensive amount. So, or at least I think it's a fair price. I don't know. Some people would probably think it's too much money. Some people maybe think it's not enough. It's hard to know. Everybody's got such a different opinion on that. But I don't like to cut the center out. Now, you do what works for you. If you have a cardstock that doesn't mar as badly as this one, by all means, cut it out. If that works for you. I think we all need to do what works best for our creating style and our budget, but I don't like how it looks. I don't like when it sags, that kind of stuff. But I had that one piece that had those feathers cut out of it from a long time ago. And thankfully there was no marring on it. So I did use it as a panel behind this, because you're right, nobody can see it. I just generally don't do that because I don't want to run it back through my die cutting machine. And I have found that the slide trimmer sometimes will kind of rip cardstock a little bit as it cuts. So it's just one of those things where it's just purely preference. You do what works for you, as Tim Holtz says all the time, you do you, and you need to make yourself happy and content with what you're doing. So by all means, you should do what works. And then I cut down my sentiments. So I grabbed a sentiment, like it's just a small little Merry Christmas, and I stamped it out in my Delicata Golden Glitz ink. I think that ink pad is dying. I had a bit of a time trying to get it to stamp nicely, and then I tried re-inking it and it got a bit odd. I think I'm just gonna have to buy a new ink pad, sadly. I have had that ink pad for a long time, so it's not like it didn't, give me all it had to give. It's stamping a bit weird now, so I am probably going to end up replacing the ink pad. But I did manage to use it to get a couple of really good sentiments, which I cut down into a small label. And then I used some Derice foam strips. I don't think you can get those anymore. I'm hoarding them like a champion. I think I have one pack left, and I love them for sentiments. I think that they're one of the best ways to do sentiment strips because they're I'd say about 1/4 of an inch thick. So they are thicker than my Big Mama foam tape that I use all the time, but they're great for sentiments if you want them to just stand up a little bit. So that's what I did here. And then I kind of adhered them on an angle at the top left of my strips, just because I thought that was a pretty place to put them. And then I'm going to adhere my snowflakes. And you guys, if you're sick of the snowflakes, I apologize in advance because I have already created all of the videos for this month, and a lot of them are using the snowflakes. I love this snowflake so much. If you were going to buy only one snowflake to have in your stash, this would be my opinion of a snowflake. If you saw last week's cards, I used the exact same snowflake and did a completely different design, where they're all up in the corners and they're just different. Like, this is such a versatile and beautiful snowflake that honestly, if you could only have one, I hope you don't have to only have one because snowflakes are phenomenal. But if you could only have one, this would be the one I would purchase. It is by far my favorite. I love it so much. So you are going to see it again. If you don't like snowflakes, I apologize. Just think about it as a flower or replace it with something else. That would be perfectly okay. But I love it, so you're going to see it many times. So now you can see that I'm just adhering down my card panels to the bases. We're pretty much done this card. I am going to add just a little strip of the gold cardstock on the inside. I'm not going to show you that, but I will be doing that. And then here I had one card base that was really odd. I think I folded it wrong. I create all my own card bases. And for whatever reason, I scored it in the wrong place, obviously, because it was really odd. So I tossed that one to the side and then I got another one and we just kept going. But because I create my own card bases, every once in a while I score them wrong and then they're really weird. But it worked out okay. I did have to add just a couple of gold pearls because, why not? I do tend to do more is more style creating to start with, but when I get into my Christmas cards, I like to add everything in the kitchen sink. It just makes me so happy. So that is what I've done here. I've added a whole bunch of pearls across it as well, just because I thought that looked really pretty. And I think this may be my favorite set from this month. You guys will have to let me know when we get closer to the end of the month. You let me know which of the Christmas in July cards from this July was your favorite, because I have a whole playlist of Christmas in July cards. I think there's almost 40 videos in there now, so you can go and check them out. They're just a whole bunch of different Christmas cards, and they're a lot of fun. So I always want to hear what you guys are thinking about the cards that I've made and what what are you enjoying? I want to know all about it, so you tell me. So I did adhere my little gold pearls across the panel, and again, you don't need to add these. If you don't have embellishments, perfectly okay to leave them off. It was a beautiful card without them, but I love embellishments, so I'm going to add them because, like I said, crafting should make you happy. So you do whatever makes you happy in your crafting, no matter what anybody says, and it's going to turn out lovely because it was made with love. So it's perfectly okay. So I'm going to pick them up here and just show you them and all of their glory. You guys tell me your thoughts. I think they turned out pretty great. You can see I added that little gold strip on the inside as well. And then that's the card I have for you guys today. So hopefully you enjoyed it. I hope you'll leave me a like, leave me a comment, and consider subscribing if you haven't haven't already, I do new videos every Monday and Thursday. And like I said, I have a goal of hitting 20,000 this year. So I would really appreciate it if you'd consider supporting and hanging out with me. If you've made it all the way to the end of the video, please leave me a snowflake in your comment just so I can see who hung out with me for this 20-minute video. Thank you so much, and I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.